You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning. It's March the 2nd, 2023, and welcome to Psychedelics, the Cannabis Educational News, your cannabis and psychedelics news source here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. Good day, Irene. How you doing?
Hello, well, how are you? Well, it's good, and I guess I'm Cindy today.
And I'm Glenn.
So today, our audience has Al and Irene instead of Cindy and Glenn. Yes. And
Correct.
I'm doing well. We have nice weather out, which is a good thing. It's getting a little bit milder, and March certainly came in with a storm, which hopefully that means it's just going to go out like a lamb.
Yeah, well, we got 10 to 20 centimeters coming tomorrow, so the snow hasn't stopped. It's still coming.
No, but if the start of March is like this,
yes,
a nice early entrance into a calm
comes in like a
spring.
Exactly, like you said, come in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. Let's keep the fingers crossed that happens.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we're filling in today. Glenn, he's down there in Costa Rica. He was having some internet issues, and I said, hey, I'll just fill in for you, and that's what we do, fill in for each other here when someone can't make it, right, Irene?
Right. Well, it's all a volunteer, right? I mean, this programming is supported by our sponsors, which is why we're able to get it out there and do it on a regular basis. But it is a volunteer basis, and so we're a really good little team of people that really work well together. I enjoy being a part of PACE, absolutely. And that's a big part of the reason why, right?
Exactly. All right, what do you say we get on with the news?
Absolutely, I'm in.
All right, here comes the first story. The headline on it reads, Albertans almost lead Canada when it comes to buying cannabis.
You know, I don't remember being in Alberta, but a new report from Stats Canada has revealed that Albertans almost lead the country when it comes to the sales of recreational cannabis. And for the first time, statistics on recreational cannabis have been added to the Control and Sale of Alcoholic Beverages publication. And Alberta sure loves its pot.
Sales of recreational cannabis by provincial cannabis authorities and other retail outlets were $4 billion in 2021-2022, equivalent to $131 per person of legal age to consume cannabis.
Well, you know what? That makes sense to me. The other numbers coming in are Yukon had the highest per person cannabis sales, which was $291 per person on average, followed by Alberta, which is $210, and Saskatchewan at $185. Meanwhile, Quebec had the lowest at $89, followed by Manitoba at $107, and then Nova Scotia at $125.
You see the chart there. All it talks about the inhaled extracts, solid edibles, beverages, so on and so forth for all the different provinces.
And Ontario's got some pretty interesting numbers in there. I know I've certainly contributed to the number for Ontario.
But dried cannabis was most popular type of cannabis sold, accounting for 71% of the recreational sales, followed by inhaled extracts such as vape pens, hash, and rosin, and edibles. Statistics Canada also touched on the market share by alcohol beverage type with a 33.7% of Albertans buying beer, followed by 33% opting for spirits and 23% for wine.
Interesting.
There you go. That's the end of that.
You know, these are some
Yeah.
statistics that I definitely like to pay attention to for very good reasons. It's interesting to see who's buying what where, right?
Right. Yes. Yes. Exactly. We rushed in here at the last minute, so I'm just making things are set up as I go along.
Fair
All
enough.
right.
Sorry.
And
And
to
I was
us.
just going to say, I find it interesting when I go into a lot of the different dispensaries throughout Ontario. All of the dispensaries tend to be a little bit different in some ways. And I was into one this weekend called The Den. And in The Den, they had all kinds of topicals available, which I haven't seen in any other of the dispensaries. So I think that's going to make the list of things that they keep track of as well, ultimately, in addition to the edibles.
Well, the interesting thing is topicals are recreational.
Well, exactly, right? They're not
But that's
recreational.
a story for another day. That's a story
Yeah.
for another day. Here's the next story. Headline says Surrey, BC needs cannabis retail stores, say Board of Trade and City Councillor.
Right. So the Surrey Board of Trade is calling on the city of Surrey, BC, to rethink its bylaws and policies that surround the cannabis industry. The board is calling for cannabis retailers to be allowed to operate in the city.
The board is calling for.
There is an opportunity for city
Anita
of Surrey.
Huberman.
Oh, I think I'm losing you, Al. You're cutting out on me. So I'm going to jump in there. There is an opportunity.
I'm here.
Okay. I thought I lost you.
Yeah. Okay. This includes implementing an efficient cannabis regulatory framework, including amendments to zoning bylaws, business license bylaws, bylaw notice enforcement bylaws, and municipal ticket information bylaws. Wow, lots to be done there. This type of framework regulations on the locations and operations of cannabis production and processing facilities and retail stores for Surrey. So it sounds like they've opted in.
It sounds like that. Yeah, it looks that way. Now, the Surrey Board of Trade has written a cannabis industry needs report, which is interesting. And it encourages municipal, provincial, and federal governments to change current policies to make the industry more enticing for business entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Surrey City Councillor Linda Arness said that the decisions made by the previous City Council did not align with federal legalization of cannabis and agrees with the Board of Trade. She says last council did not want cannabis
Last council did not want cannabis stores in Surrey. You know what it is? It's a story doesn't want shooting. And limiting the number of stores could be an option, with possible one in each city center. It should be accessible for residents that want to use cannabis, Anna says.
Right. And now she also says maybe limiting the number of stores could be an option, with possibly one in each city center. But basically, she says it should be accessible for residents that want to use cannabis. She goes on to say that she thinks it's very important we embrace this for the residents of Surrey.
All these videos.
All the videos keep interfering, eh? Okay. So our residents...
Yeah, the videos are... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, it's the videos are interfering with the and providing lag on Al's end. So moving on, I think it's very important we embrace this for the residents of Surrey, she says. Our residents should not have to travel to other municipalities to buy cannabis or buy on the illegal market. Now, Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke offered a comment late Wednesday afternoon, and she said this new council will consider allowing cannabis stores in Surrey. Locke said that in an email. She said, I have asked staff to work on a report to develop a measured approach for the potential introduction of retail cannabis locations in Surrey. Once completed, the report will be brought forth to council for consideration. And that's basically that.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that story's over.
Yeah, when the pages like that are loaded with so many videos, it really does take over the resources of our board, right? And because you're running the board today, all of your resources are being used up, technical resources, that is. So, yeah. Yeah. We'll try not to get those kinds of stories that have all that.
Yeah, and some of these stories are Glenn stories. He did pick his stories as his normally does. So, all right, you ready for the next one?
I most certainly am.
Comes the headline. California cannabis sales declined for the first time since adult use launched. There you go. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Cannabis sales in California declined in 2022 for the first time since the launch of the adult use market in 2018. And that was according to the Department of Tax and Fee Administration. That was their data that was outlined in Forbes. In all, sales dropped 8.2%, which translates $5.3 billion from the 5.77 sales in the previous year. California still represents 20% of the nation's $26 billion legal cannabis industry, the report says.
The wholesale price for cannabis in California was down last year by 26% year over year to $665 a pound. Since 2017, the price prior to the launch of legal sales, California cannabis wholesale prices are down about 50%, according to New Leaf Data Services. Pablo Zunak, an analyst at Cantor Fitzgerald who covers cannabis, told Forbes he believes that mature markets like California saw a revenue boost in 2020 and 2021 due to increased consumption during the COVID-19 pandemic. And at the end of the pandemic era policies, including stimulus checks paired with rising inflation, have added to the decline. He noted that there was only an 8% drop after a 23% increase in the 2021 and a 60% increase in 2020.
Right. And I think I'm really glad that he put in those extra numbers, because that would have been something that I had commented on. So even though it was only an 8% drop, there was still previously a 23% increase, which was huge. So California has about 1,000 dispensaries serving the state's more than 40 million residents, but 60% of Californian jurisdictions, or rather 33 of the counties, do not allow adult use cannabis businesses within their borders. That's really interesting. Last month, officials launched a $20 million grant program to increase the legal cannabis access throughout the entire state. The grant will prioritize areas where national surveys find high cannabis consumption but have little to no access to cannabis retailers, officials said, adding that the program seeks to incentivize local best practices by prioritizing programs that support equity, operators, and utilize existing licensing and permitting practices.
There you go. Yeah, we got through that story a lot easier. Didn't have a bunch of videos wanting to load on the screen.
Right. Yeah, right. So California, even though they saw a drop in their sales, and I think absolutely post-COVID, during the COVID era, there was a definite increase in sales, more than would be expected. To have only lost 8% of that after COVID, I mean, I think that's a bonus, right? And that's what Buddy's saying, more or less. Yeah.
Yep. Next story here on MJ Biz Daily. Marijuana firm Brights Green immigrant fundraising plan draws scrutiny.
So I saw this headline and thought, wow, that's interesting. NASDAQ traded marijuana company Bright Green Corp is again attracting scrutiny and questions. This time, it's for its audacious plan to raise $500 million through a federal investment program that targets immigrant investors. The company,
people from out of the country.
Yeah, the company announced in a February news release that it would use the money generated through the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program to build out its world-class production and drug manufacturing facilities in the small New Mexico town of Grant.
Florida-based Bright Green also plans to use the money to bankroll research and development as well as federal clinical trials for drug development. Bright Green CEO calls the strategy quite a novel way to raise money at a time when cannabis industry funding is tight.
Yeah. However, experts familiar with the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program are raising questions about the company's use of the investment vehicle. The program allows international investors to qualify for a U.S. green card or permanent residency if key conditions are met.
Yeah, they note that EB-5 program is used most often to supplement capital raises versus serving the main function of funding raises. The program is typically used to bankroll real estate projects such as hotels in areas with high unemployment. It appears that no cannabis-related projects have secured funding. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Minister, the EB-5 program, the agency falls under the Federal Department of Homeland Security, which is considered anti-cannabis. Given that cannabis is a Schedule I drug, it's unclear whether the DHS has approved Bright Green's plan, although the company said that USCIS processed the paperwork.
That's very interesting, eh? So, yeah, exactly. The EB-5 program has been linked to a long list of lawsuits and complaints of fraud. This is definitely one of those creative bookkeeping opportunities.
Sounds like
Just
it.
leave it at that. Bright Green generated headlines last May after it became the first plant touching business to trade on major U.S. stock exchange. In this case, the NASDAQ. Its market value was $9 billion at one point.
Wow, holy smokes. But Bright Green stock, which trades as BGXX, has plunged from nearly $60 to less than $1 as investors reassess the company's business prospects. Wow, that's a big drop. $60 down to less than $1. Holy crap.
There were a lot of tears on that.
I bet you there was.
Yeah.
But the company has been touting for months that it has secured conditional approval from the USDA to cultivate cannabis for scientific reasons.
Well, for researchers. And Bright Green isn't guaranteed to win the full DEA approval, however, and the company acknowledges that it must receive the agency's approval in order to generate revenues. So for this part, CEO Seamus McCauley and Bright Green's large-scale plans are well suited for the EB-5 program.
Yeah, he told MJ Biz Daily the cost of raising capital these days is difficult in general, and the cannabis markets are not immune to that in any shape or form. So it seemed like quite a novel way of raising the capital in order to move forward with our business plan without that necessary complication of the cost of raising capital elsewhere.
Right. So they saw an opportunity to dip into the cookie jar, and they're using it. Good for them. Investors initially cheered the announcement, driving the company's stock prices from 52 cents to $1.42, which is pretty significant. That's almost 3 times, right? That's almost 3 points. Bright Green shares were trading at 89 cents at the NASDAQ's 4 p.m. Eastern Time close on Tuesday. Now, New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham also is said to have applauded Bright Green's funding plans.
Yeah, she says Bright Green, with access to the required capital, can now create and fulfill significant medical opportunities in the state. That says in a press release. However, Bright Green hasn't raised the required capital, at least not yet. It just sounds like there's a lot of words being put in here. some people with two different stories.
It's a combination of stories because they are actually diversifying. They want to use that. They want to dip into that money and then spread it around in different ways to have.
It seems like they're almost like they're selling this thing to these people. Like it's not as if I'm concerned. I can see where the scrutiny comes in. So.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of reasons to be concerned. So far, the company has attracted investment from one source through the program. And a news release announcing the investment didn't disclose the amount. Macaulay, whose employment agreement states that he lives in Ireland, told MJ Biz Daily via email that he plans to invest in Bright Green through EB5 as a sign of commitment to the company and to gain authorization to work in the U.S.
Yeah. Well, here's some numbers for you. The EB5 program, international investors who put a minimum of $880,000 towards a project, a minimum. Holy smokes. Located in a targeted employment area can qualify for green card or permanent residency if the investment generates a minimum of 10 jobs.
So that's one of the ways of getting in, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. You can see why some of it's under scrutiny.
Yeah, and then the numbers just go on where this article explains what the EB5 is, and it's for foreign investors, to international investors who are going to create work projects in the area, right? We've seen it successfully done. We've seen it unsuccessfully done in history. Most importantly about this article is the fact that these guys have found a cookie jar that they might be able to dip into if they have the right plan to utilize those dollars. They can, we know that the cannabis industry will certainly create jobs, but it's a plans full through, right?
Yeah, regulation is supposed to keep the crooked people out. All right, on our last story before we go to break.
Yes.
And here it comes. Headline says, what could New Mexico do with cannabis revenue?
I don't know. Lots of fun stuff, I imagine. But anyway, a proposal to distribute funds from the Cannabis Excess Tax Fund to community-based programs in relation to substance abuse was tabled Tuesday at the 2023 legislative session. I think this is wonderful. Now, under House Bill 315, distributions would have been sent toward the Community Reinvestment Grant Fund and the Substance Use Disorder Prevention and Treatment Fund, providing purposes, applications, and awards.
Yeah, Rep. Andrea Romeo, who co-sponsors the bill, said it proposed to reinvest into areas of dire need in New Mexico. We wanted to have this conversation very early about our intent of how we wanted to spend and appropriate those funds directly from the cannabis excise tax. We wanted to make good on the promise that we had about getting this program up, that it would be directly reinvested into those programs we feel need additional funding and also additional support as we continue to see the success of the industry.
Right.
It's nice that it's just not going into a slush fund. It's actually going to help.
The idea with House Bill 315 and the reinvestment funds, we wanted to have a conversation with our legislator about setting up the funds that would effectively repurpose the cannabis excess tax into a promise that we made the taxpayers that we would be able to reinvest in New Mexicans where we didn't have sufficient funds for everything from behavioral health programs to mental health support to longitudinal studies on public health for cannabis use, adult responsible use, she continued. So areas where there is a dearth of research, public health and safety and information, there's support for law enforcement, etc., for drug recognition, and also for rectifying the wrongs and the harms done by the war on drugs. Very good.
However, House Republicans said that a broader tax issue to focus on, they sent KOAT, a statement in part that says House Republicans are focused on broader tax issues like reducing the antiquated GRT system that is holding our state economy back regionally and nationally. We are fighting for better support and less government burden on working families. But here's all this money that's coming from cannabis, and they're not interested in helping out there.
And that's what it comes down to. She's saying, look, we're willing to stick to our guns, and we want to reinvest this tax into the appropriated into the proper funding that we told our taxpayers we would. And the higher ups are saying, no, we don't care about that. We're more interested in the overall. So they're fighting over what
the Republicans are all about tax breaks. Yeah. Well, hey, someone's got to pay for those roads. So, all right. Well, Irene, it's commercial time. Time for us to hear from our sponsors and those who help to inform our viewers. Right. We'll be back in, I don't know, probably about 2 minutes and 54 seconds. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News, found here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network, here at paceradio.net.
In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to save the VCBC at gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more. We've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network, here at paceradio.net.
And we're back for a medication session, and we're live here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. Well, Green Irene, what do you say? We got 4 more stories to cover.
Yes, we do. And the first one starts with women in cannabis. It says, women in cannabis find strength in the community.
That's right. This is from StratCan. It says, it's no secret that women face challenges in the workplace. As of 2021, a female worker in Canada makes 89 cents to every dollar earned by a man. This statistic points to a larger problem, wherein women often experience subtle and times overt gender bias. Each industry has unique ways of expressing this bias, and cannabis is no exception.
So true. In cannabis, there was a tightly knit legacy community that was largely male dominated, says Audrey Wong, CEO and founder of Zyre Brands in Vancouver. which makes full spectrum cannabis vapes. It's been tough for women to build a community. For me, most of the people I've built connections with until recently are men. Financing, already an uphill battle for many cannabis businesses, remains a big hurdle.
Yeah, Ashley Athill, co-owner of Harvester, a micro cannabis processor here in Ontario, says it doesn't matter who you are, raising funds is definitely a challenge. Some investors, not all, but some, are very focused on male-run companies and are less open to funding female-owned companies. Given how young the regulated cannabis market is in Canada, most businesses can be considered startups. This brings its own set of challenges for women.
Exactly. As a startup, the early funding generally comes from self, friends, family. Perhaps there might be an angel investor, says Karen Young, president founder of Woven Brands, which makes sense and purpose cannabis beverages. In my experience, she goes on to say, even if they believe in your ability to lead and build a great community, there seems to be this skepticism about whether or not you can do it in such a tumultuous and competitive environment. I think it's an unconscious bias, kind of like it's too rough and tough for a female to handle.
Not having women in visible leadership roles can directly affect access to capital. The more we see women in higher positions, the more culture we accept that they are capable of making the right business decisions. Sarah Roberts, president at Citatrex Labs in Kelowna, BC, says that while there is respect for women as knowledge contributors, this doesn't always translate into seeing them as leaders. I see a lot of female QAs, for example, but not nearly as many CEOs in an industry which has been built with investment. This may skew the odds against women-led companies.
It certainly does. Now, Shauna Levi, founder and CEO of Madge & Mercer, which makes cannabis self-care products designed exclusively for women, says that she started her business to address a real and authentic need, which is that most women over 40 experience, which is hormonally induced symptoms. These can include stress and anxiety, chronic pain and inflammation, and sleep challenges, but this doesn't necessarily resonate with male investors. The irony was when I first went out to raise funds, men usually responded with, "Why so niche?" She says, on the other hand, female investors got it immediately. My investor base is 65% female.
Wow. One of the most notable changes facing women-owned business leaders is simple communication. It is not only that men and women have different communication styles. It seems that men, perhaps unconsciously, are more inclined to listen to and to address other men. When we were getting started, a male partner and I had over 36 meetings with LPs where I was the only female president, according to Kristen DeWitt, co-founder and chief executive officer at White Rabbit OG in Vancouver, which makes cannabis-infused soft chews. Just so you know, White Rabbit is going to be at the Can Expo. We'll be seeing them when we're there, Irene.
Oh, fantastic. Looking forward to that then.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Interesting. During our proposal, she said, in which the audience was always male dominated, all of the operational questions were directed at my male partner. He would look at me, I would answer the questions, which would then be redirected to him. In today's times, that's ridiculous, but it is still, and I do believe it's an unconscious bias myself.
Yeah.
But on with our story, DeWitt's further spent the better part of 2 decades in food manufacturing, where she saw little prejudice against women. However, prior to that, she worked in industrial chemicals, which, like cannabis, is quite male-dominated.
Yeah, she says that my experience in cannabis has been similar to industrial chemicals, in that at the beginning there are some suspicions. They wonder, does she know what she's talking about? For her part, Young, who is a former executive at Nelson Waters, can relate to the fact that women often aren't taken seriously within the cannabis community.
It's true. I can't count the number of times I have proposed an idea or action plan that gets picked apart. However, when a male counterpart expresses or repeats the same plan, it is believed and built upon, she says. When we're speaking, they're not listening, and men tend to do most of the speaking in meetings I've been in. I believe for the most part, it is an unconscious bias, which is disappointing given all the resources and all the dollars in the industry that has put into this challenge. You know, given that women bring a unique perspective and unique abilities to the market, it would make sense to sit up and listen.
Yeah, exactly. Given that the women bring a unique perspective, and you just read that. I have 2 decades of experience in science and food tech building products, DeWitt says, but I wouldn't say that I was always welcomed with open arms or an open attitude. It's primarily assumed that someone in an executive role is a man and that they have the expertise and knowledge to perform in the world, whereas the opposite is assumed from the female perspective. I have to prove myself before I'm giving my acknowledgement to go ahead. Paying attention to communication skills and styles and being inclusive of all participants isn't only the right thing to do, it also makes business sense, they say. Failure to do so can have real consequences for all involved. Roberts from Citatrex Labs describes a boardroom discussion with 7 other people in which her company was central to the success of the 2 other groups at the table.
At the end of the discussion, after being spoken over multiple times during the meeting, there was a roundtable during which each person was asked if they were in agreement with the proposed plan, she says. Everyone agreed, but when it came to my turn to speak, suddenly the conversation abruptly moved on and I was not asked for my opinion. Although I could have interrupted and insisted on speaking, I decided to take this as an indicator of future business practices and let the deal fall through.
Yeah,
Roberts isn't the only woman who walked away because the poor communication and lack of respect. It did not instill confidence. So, you know, it's again, this whole situation, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, not written in the article, it's another industry in which a female counterpart has to work twice as hard to get half as far with the same amount of information. And we're in a decade now, or an era now, in which that should not be there. And I think if both men and women become aware of that, because I also believe that as females, we tend to walk in sort of expecting that, which will change our ability to communicate effectively as well, potentially, right?
Well, I can tell you here at paceradio.net, the 4 years that we've been together, that at no time was there ever any more males than females. It's always been a female-dominated network. Until now. Right now we're at 50-50. But I know there was a time where there was, I was the only guy.
I know, it was so cute. Al and all his girls kind of felt like Charlie's Angels, except we were Al's gals.
That was the backroom talk. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, and it was the women and the mothers that spoke up that broke the back on alcohol prohibition. And you know, there was lots of women that were involved in ending cannabis prohibition here too. So, all right, on to our next article, and this one comes to us from Mugglehead Magazine. SciSparc conduct CBD
science. SciSparc.
Yeah, conduct CBD oil clinical trial for children with autism.
Yes. So this trial is going to be held at the Surrey University Medical Center in Be'er Sheva, Israeli. So what they're doing is they'll be conducting a clinical trial in Israel, examining the effects of CBD oil on children that have autism spectrum disorder. The company announced the upcoming study on Monday, which will be run at Soroka University Medical Center in the city of Be'er Sheva. The trial has been approved by the Israeli Ministry of Health and the Ethics Committee from the medical center.
The proprietary treatment designated as SCI 210 utilizes a combination of CBD and cannamate, an anti-inflammatory painkiller developed by SciSparc, primarily made from a word I can't pronounce, which is they say is a natural compound. The trial will be assessing the efficacy, safety, and tolerability of the SCI 210 in comparison to CBD monotherapy in kids with ASD. So this would be a chemically done product.
Actually, both components are, so the cannamide, which is just another it's just another natural chemical molecule component, and the PEA combined with the CBD, they're both natural compounds. They're using both of them instead of just CBD to see if there is more effect that way. Because we know the entourage effect does make a difference, right? For many other situations. So the Psy 210 is utilizing combinations of both those molecules, which is quite interesting. The word spectrum in ASD refers to the vast range of symptoms and varying levels of severity in those with the disorder. That's the spectrum. The ASD impacts brain development and causes communication issues and problems with regular social interaction. PEA is an endocannabinoid-like lipid mediator, and it had with extensively documented anti-inflammatory, analgesic, antimicrobial, immune modulatory, and neuroprotective effects. And that's the information that's coming from the Journal of Molecular Sciences.
Right. One of Israel's leading cannabis companies, Tikkun Ulam Cannabis, will be supplying SciSparc with the CBD oil, which will be derived from its cultivars. The company has also developed SCI 210 to treat status epilepticus, a condition primarily found in children and seniors causing severe seizures.
Yes. So the company has had a pipeline of other proprietary drugs, and I hate that they use that word, but I understand why they do, used to treat Tourette syndrome, Alzheimer's disease, and pain. And for the record, or off the record, their studies on Tourette syndrome is just fabulous, and it holds so much promise for patients suffering from that condition. Moving on, SciSparc stock dropped 5.62% on Wednesday to only 72 cents on the NASDAQ exchange. This might be an opportunity. And Tikkun Olam stock dipped by 2.9% to the equivalent of 27.75 on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Something to keep in mind. Cannabis is a key medicine in Israel.
Yeah, sure is. Oh yeah, big time. Big time. That's where a lot of the research has been done over the years.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, according to the Basic of Clinical Physiology and Pharmacology, Israeli scientists have been involved in cannabis preclinical research for over 50 years. And we know that because of Dr. Ralph McCollum. And clinicians have done clinical research and have treated patients with cannabis for well over a decade. And that was according to the 2015 article. So that was since 2005. Now, Israeli was also one of the world's first countries to establish a medical cannabis program dating back decades.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's been they've had vaporizers in hospitals and the whole bit to do tests and get information. Where they haven't outlawed it like some countries, as it did in the US.
Exactly. They have been at the forefront of research and dedication to this plant, right? So, for very far back. I believe it goes back to the 40s, but somewhere around the 70s, Dr. Ralph McCollum got involved. He was looking for how THC was going to affect our brain and cause us so much damage, to which he could find none, but did discover, him and his team discovered the endocannabinoid system.
Isn't that weird? How often they go looking for some damage and they don't find stuff?
Do you know how often that happens in science, though? We have to remember that medicine is a science, and science is only a theory. You know, it's hypothesis based on the information we currently have available to us with the tools. It's not the golden rule. It's what we, based on what we know right now, this is what we can tell you about that. And that's why things change in medicine. That's why things change in health and wellness. We just keep getting better is the game plan. And that's what we've got to stay focused on. Nothing else.
All right, on to the next story. This one headline says anorexia is the deadliest psychedelic disorder.
Psychiatric disorder, yeah.
Psychiatric, disorder. Could psychedelics help?
Yes.
Gee, the words are almost perfectly lined up there, eh?
Yeah, that's a great article to show, isn't it? So this is interesting. Allie began to cry. They go on to tell the story of a 34-year-old Californian who had spent more than a decade in and out of the hospital since developing anorexia as a teenager. And now she felt something new. As she drank, she discovered that the usual sensation of fear was completely absent. And instead, she felt curious affinity. It was just this beautiful moment where I was like, oh, what am I, water? She says it was so strange, but really healing. So this goes on to, this article tells her story, basically. But anorexia nervosa is the deadliest psychiatric disorder. Patients are at risk from the physical impacts of starving themselves, as well as from a high rate of suicide. Medical knowledge of the condition dates back to the 19th century, but no drug has ever been approved to treat it. Psychiatrists tend to offer a combination of therapies, which include antidepressants, nutritional programs aimed at helping the patient regain weight, but they frequently fail, and with some experts estimating that only about 1/3 of people make a full recovery.
And so 2 years ago, when Allie heard about a small medical trial in San Diego investigating the effects of anorexia and psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, she felt a flicker of hope. Something in me knew that I didn't do it, she says. I was going to be dead by the end of the year.
Yes. So from what I understand, she went in to do it, and there's other stories of others here. But if we go right down to the very end of the article, and I do apologize, I should have looked this one over.
It's a long article.
There's a few stories on here which are really, and for those of you who have the time, definitely look into this. And especially if this is something that you're coping with, I find every story I've read has told me the same thing. And that is that the psilocybin is making a huge difference for each of these patients in this story, as well as many other anecdotal evidence. This week, in the very end, after Allie's treatment in 2021, she's tried to stop herself eating and she's failed. She says she remembers trying to restrict just to see if this was for real. And after just like a day one, I was like, this is so dumb. Why would I ever do that again? She says, oh my God, it's really gone. You know, previously a vegan, she's enjoying and trying new foods. She especially loves smoked barbecue meat, but mostly she's relieved that she doesn't even think about food or her body anymore. She's moved in with a friend. She's who doesn't encourage her eating disorder. Psilocybin provided Allie with hope, and psychedelics ultimately could eventually do that for millions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Our show on Tuesday.
It says that Allie is now fighting forest fires in North California. Gee, that's a big change.
Amazing. How amazing to see this one plant turn around somebody's life. And we see it all the time with cannabis, how it just turns things around for people. That combined with psilocybin, I've been doing an awful lot of research. I pay attention. Actually, I tune in on Tuesdays to our show, Mushy Moments, here on Pace Radio with Cindy and Steve, Reverend Cindy Howell and Steve Mather. And they, from At Ease, they do that show. I have found it very informative and very educational, and it's helped to alleviate a lot of the unnatural fears that I think I was experiencing related to psychedelics.
Well, I know that we've talked, on the air during shows and all that about, maybe one day you're going to try some mushrooms, or you've talked to people about the microdosing end of things.
Yes. And as such, we're going to do an interview on it, but just to give our current listeners a little, what do you call those where you get a little heads up? I was provided with their sample package, which has At Ease. It's the At Ease sample package. And there's the original blend. There's an evening blend. There's a main event blend. And then there's a Scooby's blend in this trial package. And I have been doing it as per the program, and spoke with Steve directly and said, how should I be taking these? And I've noticed a huge decrease in SAD. So I experience seasonally affected depression disorder. When the sun goes away, I go into all those types of cataclysmic experiences. And this year, this has really certainly had impact and made a change in my coping skills.
Good. Yeah, it's all different kinds of mushrooms that he's got into that mix. All right, last story of the day. And the headline on it says, psychedelics can make your brain grow more cells, but they are no magic solution.
Right? Isn't that beautiful? So it is high time, all puns intended, the world wakes up towards the limitless therapeutic possibilities of psychedelics. Now, the latest research from science has found that psychedelics can reverse the brain atrophy and promote cellular growth in the brain. This is huge scientific.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Psychedelic therapy has been gaining attention as potential treatments for various mental ailments, including depression, anxiety, and PTSD. The recent study published in Science highlights the ability for certain psychedelic compounds like DMT and psilocybin to enter the brain cells and promote the regrowth of dendrites, which are responsible for receiving signals from other brain cells.
It's cool. It's like we can rewire our brain. It's like these things that stopped working after a stroke. Yeah. So those neurons can start firing together again, and neurons that fire together wire together. So this is really cool science. This breakthrough offers insight into the mechanisms behind the therapeutic potential of psychedelics. By fostering the regrowth of the dendrites, these compounds can help reverse the damage that was done to brain cells and can restore their proper function. This has very important implications for the treatment of various mental illnesses, as many of them have been linked to damaged dendrites and atrophied brain cells. Use it or lose it. And if you don't, that's atrophy, right? It dies. But this stuff's bringing it back to life.
Yeah.
The brain, yeah. The brain go ahead.
Okay, the brain has cells called neurons that communicate with each other through special branches called dendrites. Damage to these cells and dendrites can cause various brain disorders. Psychedelics like DMT and psilocybin have been found to help regrow these dendrites, which could be helpful in treating mental health conditions like depression and anxiety. Scientists have found that psychedelics activate a certain protein in brain cells called the 5-HT2A receptor. This protein is also stimulated by serotonin, which is a chemical that affects mood. However, serotonin alone cannot regrow neurons, and it cannot enter cells easily.
Right. So further experiments showed that most of these receptors are inside the brain cells. And once serotonin was able to get inside, it actually led to the growth and antidepressant effects in mice. So psychedelics were also able to prompt the regrowth of dendrites in cell cultures. In contrast to traditional antidepressants like the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the SSRIs, which can take a really long time to start working, psychedelics may offer a faster and more effective solutions, because SSRIs work by increasing levels of serotonin in the brain, which can thicken dendrites over time. However, the regrowth of dendrites with psychedelics appears to be more direct and immediate.
And this is good news because traditional antidepressants can take a long time to work, but psychedelic therapy has the potential to work faster and more effectively. It's important to continue studying these compounds to see if they can help more people struggling with mental health conditions. It's important to know that psychedelic therapy is not a silver bullet for mental health issues. The effects of those compounds can vary depending on the individual and the context in which they are used, and psychedelic therapy should always be administered by trained professionals, they say.
Yes, in a safe environment. And of course, when you're trying anything new, right? Despite the potential benefits of psychedelic therapy, there are still many questions that need to be answered. Future research should focus on understanding how these compounds work inside the cells to foster regrowth of brain cells and what effect these changes have on the brain function. Researchers must also study the long-term effects of psychedelic therapy to ensure its safety and efficacy as treatment for mental health. These psychedelics have been...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, psychedelics have been the subject of taboo and misconception for decades, largely due to their association with the counterculture movements and recreational use. However, recent scientific research has revealed that the therapeutic potential of psychedelics in treating various mental health disorders, including depression, anxiety, PTSD, despite the stigma surrounding psychedelics, remains hindering progress in the field of mental health. Breaking taboos surrounding psychedelics is crucial for several reasons. It's essential to understand that psychedelics are not inherently dangerous substances.
Yeah.
The fear and stigma associated with psychedelics has been based on little scientific evidence and largely driven by moral ethics. So once again, that stigma was attached to the psychedelics, so on and so forth. Right? Yeah.
That's
and
right.
So
never seems to
many
end.
Of us educated.
It's always there.
Yes, many of us educated by the public service announcements.
Yes, I'm looking at the clock there, and I say it's time we better go.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in.
Telling me. All right, from the Legacy420.com news desk, that's our news report for today. We hope you found it educational and informative. Thank you to the folks at Legacy 420 and the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. Catch our next Psychedelics and Cannabis educational news broadcast Monday with Rev Kelly and myself. See you all later. Bye-bye.
Ciao for now.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.